Hello and welcome. Today we've got lawyer Brunson, and today we're going to be discussing what happened the other day with the assassination attempt of Donald Trump, which is absolutely disgusting. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Instagram channel at nicholas.veniamin, where you can follow all my daily news reels. Lawyer, thank you so much for joining me, sir. How are you, and what have you been up to?
Yeah, I'm doing great here. Yeah, I've been traveling a bit and working on a show. We're going to have two showings of a Grammy Award-winning movie called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in Branson, Missouri. So I'm in Branson, Missouri for a while.
Very interesting. Well, I hope everything's going really well with you. Now, it's been a very, funny 2 days with what's going on in, the last 2 days with the, assassination attempt of Donald Trump. A lot of people are saying that the Secret Services have failed and that there were people that spotted the assassin on one of the roofs and they were ignored. And I think that definitely something should have been done about that. It could have been prevented. What do you think about that? Because now people are saying, well, it might be maybe one of the Secret Services or the boss of the Secret Service, is part of the inside job. What do you think about that?
Well, the craziest part of the whole thing to me is the fact well, we have to verify it, but apparently the shooter has gone public, if it's really from him, saying that he had his sights on the shooter and they had binoculars on the shooter and they were told not to take him out. Now, they could have simply removed the president instead of saying, in addition to don't shoot him, they should not have allowed the president to stay there for 3 minutes while the shooter was on the roof. And so there was some intentional ridiculous stuff going on, and it looks highly questionable as far as intention and whether it wasn't. So they had plenty of time to remove him after they had seen the shooter, apparently, and they didn't. And there was so much nonsense. It doesn't even make any sense at all that it was a failure. It has to be intentional. No one can be that bad at securing the perimeters. So
Absolutely. I mean, I have to say there was about 6 to 8 gunshots, and the fact that it only got the top part of his ear is a miracle.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. The fact that he can get on the roof, the shooter could get on the roof, and Secret Service not put the president in a safe place when they see him. I mean, 3 minutes they know there's a shooter, and they let the president stand there speaking for 3 minutes while they know there's a shooter with a gun that they won't take out. It's mind-boggling. So it definitely looks highly suspicious, and that's very scary. My concern is I hope that Trump has access to outside information and isn't going on just Secret Service isolating his information. So hopefully he's getting the scoop and real data so that this can,
I mean,
this can be resolved.
this is a letdown of all of the Secret Services, and I've met some of them when I met Donald Trump, and they seem lovely. But do you think that we should expect Donald Trump to renew his Secret Service team?
Well, he needs to be able to choose who they are, and they need to be probably non-government, mercenaries type, professionals that have served in the Army as special forces, where it's like a backup plan, where they don't just rely completely on Secret Service. He should have a team that's saying, hey, there's a security breach there, and they should have the ability to notify President Trump in an earpiece, get down now, without having to wait for Secret Service. So there's a lot that can be done, and hopefully he'll get all the information he needs to get, and he won't be isolated from that installation. I'm sure he's all over it. So
No,
it was a miracle that he survived that. He should be dead right now, according to that plan. That was a highly, executed, professional plan. But the shooter, I guess, wasn't as professional as he should have had if they really wanted to take him out. But he was pretty effective coming that close, But he was not a professional marksman. He was not a marksman. So it was, pretty crazy indeed.
one of the biggest indicators for me that this was an inside job was the fact that, there are many, many factors, but one of them is that the assassin, was only 20 years old. And, it's, when they're 20 years old, they have no experience of life. They don't understand about politics. It seemed like he may be a little bit on the spectrum as well when you have a look at him, and he was probably offered a lot of money to do this. And when you're at that age, 20 years old, you're offered a lot of money. You're being manipulated under MK Ultra by the Democrats to do a job. You're going to buy into it, and this is why they took it down a 20-year-old. They used a 20-year-old, not a 30-year-old, where a 30-year-old has a bit more common sense, understands Donald Trump's policies, and has an interest. What do you think about that?
Well, when President Biden says a bullseye needs to be put on him, and the whole media that's been bought out by the left tries to convinces people that he's a threat to democracy, this kid probably thought he was going to be a national hero after that. So he's a victim.
Interesting. Now, within 48 hours after the shooting, a federal judge has dismissed the case of classified documents against Donald Trump. What are your thoughts, and do you believe that has anything to do with the assassination attempt?
Well, I think the rats are scattering. The lights have been turned on, and everyone that's been trashing and defaming and slandering Donald Trump has blood on their hands, and they're guilty of participating in this encouragement of this assassination. And there could be lawsuits like crazy. Look at the victims that were shot. Everyone that has trashed Donald Trump in an unfair and dishonest way could be liable for damages. So I think there's a lot of scrambling, and there's a lot of backpedaling, trying to show that they're not that they haven't taken the position that they had. So I think a lot of people are scared because of what they've said and what they've done, and they're feeling some responsibility and liability with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in history, the deep state has a very good track record of discrediting their opponents if they disagree with them. They discredit them, they indict them, they persecute them, they put them into prison, and they even kill them. And they've been very successful. But I think there's a shift in our reality in this earth that we live in, God's earth. And I feel that they're losing a lot of power now, and all their tricks are no longer working. Now, what's their next stage now? I mean, they can't do this again, can they? Because it will be far too obvious. Donald Trump has now the opportunity to really upscale his security level. So what do you think the deep state will try to do moving closer to the elections in November the 5th?
I think it could be pretty simple. They're going to they could replace Biden with someone else, and then they could continue to use their Dominion machines to change the outcome of the election. Right? Make it really close and have a new person. And so Biden's out. So we just have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, right?
Absolutely. Well, I don't think people will buy into that. I think a lot of people now that have not supported Trump, I think this is going to be an awakening call for them with this assassination attempt. What do you think about that?
Yeah, hopefully that they don't produce, that the globalists don't produce some real scary threat like a nuclear threat worldwide. Then we've got to go into a world peace agreement. Hopefully something like that isn't about to happen. But you look at the pandemic and how effective that was. So people aren't going to be tricked that way again. But could you imagine a couple of SADMs, small nuclear devices that go off that don't produce any radiation but cause a lot of damage, and scaring the whole world into submitting to a global peace agreement and a global world order government? And so I think that's what could be in their plans, on their agenda. But how America is going to react to that, that's a whole different story. Then you have to remember that God's in control, right? He loves this country and loves his people on this planet more than anyone else. And there's a plan in place, and we want to align ourselves in a way where we can be ready to participate in that plan.
Absolutely. Now, on the RNC convention, I think just a couple of days away, Donald Trump has mentioned that he's not going to stick to his scheduled speech, and that he's going to, because of what's happened, with the assassination attempt, he's going to go off speech and give a new speech, what do you think he's going? What kind of things do you think we are expected to hear? Do you think he's going to go full steam ahead and say some home truths or something? What do you think?
Oh, sure. I think he has a louder voice and a more effective microphone, bully pulpit more than ever before. And it's so obvious now that the forces against him are the forces against we the people. And I think he's going to make that point. It's like they're not after him, they're after us. They're after anyone that supports the truth and supports a constitutional republic. And so he's going to just rally around saying we're stronger than ever before, I think, and we're going to push ahead and we're going to make sure that this next election is as honest as it can be and rally the troops, so to speak. So, but he'll probably also express a strong message not to get violent, not to push back with any kind of violence, but hopefully there won't be Antifa or other groups that pose as Trump supporters that start doing some crazy stuff, and that's possible.
Absolutely. Now, when you have somebody like President Trump who wants to, abolish taxes on tips and income tax, and he's a pro-constitutional guy, of course, they're going to try to do everything they can to get rid of you and assassinate you and probably even cause an emergency to stop the elections because just far too many people want to vote for Donald Trump. Why don't you tell us about that? Because I know you're very big on the Constitution. That's your area of expertise.
Sure.
Why don't you tell us how important that we enforce the Constitution, but not just to the United States,
Sure.
but this is a common practice for the whole world.
Yeah, and the Federal Reserve System ties into that. And Donald Trump, I think, is going to be very supportive. See, there's a bill that's been introduced by the Senate and the House promoting the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 being abolished. Now, the Federal Reserve System has been attacked by presidents before, JFK and Abraham Lincoln, and no one really since then. And look what happened to them. But it's so at LloydBrunson.com, we now have a petition for redress of grievances that anyone can sign. It's a letter exposing the Fed in a more specific and simple way than Congress is actually doing it with their bill. And that what happens there is like the letter campaign. You can sign it. It's just a few paragraphs. It explains in clear terms what the Fed is doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And then it goes to a fulfillment company that prints it, folds it, puts it in an envelope and postage stamps it, and then sends it to Congress. And that's real important right now. People need to understand, and President Trump's going to be all over this, I believe, that when $1 trillion is created out of thin air, there's so much misinformation about that. But the bottom line is when that $1 trillion is created out of thin air, that's supposed to be profit for the Treasury, not tax debt. So what's happening is we're allowing the Federal Reserve System to create our currency and then bill us for it, the principal and the interest. And all the Federal Reserve System is supposed to take from the trillions that they create that belong really to us, to the Treasury, all they're supposed to take is their operating expenses. So Stephen Moore is an economist, and we've had a discussion about this some years ago. And to put it in real simple terms, if we're successful, and we should be, in enforcing the nonprofit status of the Federal Reserve System, then that would, the money, not just money, but we're talking about assets that should be returned to the Treasury, would far exceed the debt by multiple times. And people need to understand that. And so the LloydBrunson.com website, LloydBrunson.com, has information about that, and people can now sign their own personal petition for redress of grievances to encourage Congress to support that bill and to maybe fix parts of it that may not be accurate, but expose it in proper and simple terms. And Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution is very clear. The Congress is supposed to create our money, not a privately controlled and privately owned central bank, aka the Federal Reserve System. So, people don't understand the first 10 amendments were really defined by Congress as further declaratory and restrictive clauses to the Constitution. They didn't define them as the Bill of Rights because you can't have a Bill of Rights that enumerates all of our rights. They're innumerable. You can't put them all down on paper, right? So the first 10 amendments were defined that way. And the last line of the fifth is a powerful clause, and it's never been identified with the power that my book has. You can get it 7. I don't want to sound like a bookseller, but it's there. It's the only place you can get this information really like this. And that is that the Fifth Amendment, the last line, is very clear. Nor shall your private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Well, that's the definition of socialism and the prohibition of it. But it's also the definition of taxation and the prohibition of it. So that little clause right there with its declaratory and restrictive power literally nullifies all the tax clauses in the Constitution. So how do we pay for our roads and our military and everything else? Article 1, Section 8 gives a righteous Congress the power to do what the Federal Reserve is doing without giving us a tax bill. So if we were to enforce the nonprofit status of the Federal Reserve System, that would fix the core problem. And then a thorough audit would return and expose the many trillions of dollars that were not put on the federal ledger, were not put down as a tax bill that they've been creating and spending that is ending up destroying this country.
This is
So
the
that's it in a
biggest,
nutshell.
yeah, no, lawyer, this is the biggest, fear that they have. I think the deep state right now are in big panic mode because they missed. And they know that they can't try something like this again. It will just be far too obvious. It's going to be much more harder for them. And God help them, because Donald Trump is really going to drain the swamp. And I really believe that. And we need to be voting and praying for him. But Lloyd Brunson, thank you very much for sharing everything with us today. Is there
Thank
anything
you.
else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
Well, you can get the book at Seven Discoveries. That's the number 7discoveries.com. That's a little fits in your pocket, but it explains the Fed in real simple terms and shows the constitutionality of what should be happening with our money. And then, of course, you're right to your petition for redress of grievances available to do that. You can do three of them, three different ones at lloydbrunson.com. So just a big thank you to everyone that's doing that. And I'm going to promote that just as much as I can so America can come together supporting this very important truth that needs to be told.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Well, Lloyd Brunson, thank you very much. And we'll speak again very soon. You take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate it.